What's up, everybody? I'm Todd and this is Digging Life, and it is that time again. It's time to do the 20,000 mile review on this 2019 Ford F750 dump truck. Let me just show you guys. This is the typical load that I haul with this machine. It's a 20,000 pound Yanmar Vio excavator. And when I'm not hauling that, I'm usually hauling around 9.5 tons of material in the bed. And you can see I take care of this truck. I don't beat it up and mistreat it. Well, let's jump inside here. And I just want to show you guys, I'm a little bit late. We actually have 24,000 miles on this truck. So let's get into it. Just to give a quick go over, you guys can see that I keep my truck clean. I take care of it. Sorry I let it get dark on me. I just haven't had time to, no busted, cracked glass. Got my CB mounted down here for anybody that's new. And I just got my gear keeper up there. So let's get into the review. Now again, I apologize, it's getting late and kind of dark, but this is just really the only opportunity. I bought this truck when it was brand new. It is now January 21st, 2021. I think in this review, I'm just going to go through like a typical day of running this truck, and it runs all day, every day. One thing, it's winter time, and I can say that this truck starts extremely well when it's cold weather. The glow plugs work really fast, like just maybe like 3 to 4 seconds, and this thing will fire right up. It even runs smooth when it's cold. And it's never had a hard time starting. It's never stuttered. It's never acted funny when it starts up. It starts up exactly the same every time. That's one thing I really like about it, is that as far as starting, it's extremely reliable. And being a newer truck, it's tight. Everything is operating as it's supposed to. This truck has an exhaust brake, which works as good as an exhaust brake can be expected to work. It would have been nice if I could have had the option of having an engine brake, but they didn't offer that, and I would have also liked to have had multiple engine options when I was ordering this truck. The only engine that they offered this particular year was the 6.7 liter Power Stroke engine, and it does have a 6-speed, I believe it's a torque shift transmission. You can distinctly tell the difference in how this engine runs and how the engines in the pickups run. Now somebody may comment and say that it's exactly the same, but it is my understanding that the engine and the transmission were engineered a little bit different, and maybe their shift points are different. The biggest thing that helps this truck run and pull heavy loads is the rear end in it, and it's a 615 rear end, I believe it is, 615. Extremely low geared. There were 3 horsepower options with this truck. There was a 270 horsepower, a 300 horsepower, and a 330 horsepower. I ordered the 330, and it does have a lot of, as far as horsepower goes, it pulls really well. One thing I don't like is that it has almost kind of a inconsistent throttle response. Sometimes you'll stomp on it and it'll go, and then sometimes you stomp on it and it seems like it takes 4 or 5 seconds before the engine really starts to make power. If you're running in big cities a lot, this truck could be a little bit of a problem, because you can't just jump out into traffic. When I feel like I'm gonna have to really get out quick, I have to hold the brake down and give it just a touch of throttle to get that engine revved up, and then I can stomp on it and let off the fuel, almost like you're staging a drag car. you've got to get the engine revved up and be ready to go. So that's not a good quality, I think. Ever since this truck was new, it's got a really loud rear end. It's not like a tire sound. It's almost like the rear differential is out of adjustment. It whines constantly, but it's gone through its services. Everything checks out. So just be prepared. If you get one of these trucks, you're going to be listening to a lot of what sounds like tire whine going down the road. And you can kind of hear it right there. The engine, super quiet. You can't expect it to make a lot of noise. It's not like a big bore engine that's going to be thumping a lot. You guys and gals can comment below any questions you have that I am not touching on. I'll be glad to answer as many as I can. And I'm just kind of going along a ride right now, and things that are popping into my head I'm just kind of talking about and wanting to inform you guys as best I can, because you don't really get anything from just test driving one of these. You don't know until you get into it. As far as pulling, it pulls my excavator just fine. The biggest thing is that no matter how I load my trailer, pulling around the mountains of North Carolina here, as long as I'm going uphill, I'm fine. But when I start backing down a slope on gravel or pavement, then the front end gets light enough to where if I hit the brakes and I don't have them adjusted just right, the front end will just slide and I don't have any steering, which is frankly a bit unnerving. Legally, I can haul 9 1/4 tons in the dump bed. That puts me right at 33,000 pounds, which is my limit here in North Carolina. Getting into that, that's my biggest gripe and was my biggest disappointment about this truck. When you engage the PTO, since this is an automatic, it's a hot PTO, you can just flip it on any time. You don't have to shift into neutral. But when you flip the PTO on, it limits you to 1,500 RPMs engine. Now in this automatic, in this particular truck, if you have anything over about 5 or 6 tons in the bed, you can hit the fuel and that doesn't allow you to rev up high enough for this truck to even pull forward. So what you have to do if you're going to tailgate stone, such as on a driveway, you have to engage the PTO, raise the bed to where you want it to be at its max, to where you're not so high that it'll pull the front end of the truck up, but also be high enough for material to consistently come out of the bed. You then have to flip the PTO off and start your tailgate. And you've got to get really used to it to know at what point and how light you are and enough materials out of the bed for you to be able to, while you're moving, flip the PTO back on and be able to raise the bed. So I can't stand that. It's to protect the transmission and the pump. If you leave the PTO on and you get going down the highway and forget it's on, it's my understanding that it'll burn the transmission up somehow. I'm not a mechanic, so I don't know. I just know what I've been told. I was told by a mechanic that there's 2 wires in the wiring of the bed itself and how it's wired into the truck. They can just swap those wires around and everything runs the same, except when you turn your PTO on, it doesn't kill your engine RPMs. It lets you run your RPMs wherever you want them to be at. The next thing that I don't like about this truck is going downhill. You pull it in to first gear, there's not enough compression. The engine's not big enough to have a holdback. That's the best way I know how to describe it. So when you're tailgating and you're facing downhill a little bit and you're trying to ride the brakes, the braking is really good on this truck, but that works against you. You can't just barely hit the brakes and maintain speed. So you're constantly kind of lurching, and it may just be me. Maybe I'm just a bad driver. I don't know. But with my old 1985 L9000 dump truck that's got an 8-speed transmission, I can put it in first gear and just it'll go at a constant speed downhill, and it makes it tailgating very simple. With this truck, not so much. Being that a very, very large amount of my work and my business is gravel driveways, this is not the best truck I've ever run for doing specifically gravel driveways, because tailgating saves a lot of time and a lot of work, and I need to be able to do that. I have, with a whole lot of trial and error and practice, gotten decent at tailgating material with this truck, but it's still, I find it difficult. It never becomes second nature like it did with my old truck. With the old truck, it was very predictable, and I got very good at being able to lay down material at a very specific depth at a certain speed. The interior of this truck is almost identical to an F750. Almost identical. I did have them put in both driver and passenger air ride seats, and I can tell you, it has taken every bit of this 24,000 miles for this seat to break in and become bearable. Before, I would say 18,000 miles, it was almost intolerable. I dreaded being stuck in this seat. It was just super uncomfortable. The seats in my old truck, way better. Way, way better. So don't think you're gonna order air ride seats in these and you're gonna be a lot more comfortable. The only adjustments this seat has is the back tilts forward and back just a little bit. It does have air lumbar supports, but you can't adjust the tilt of the seat that you're sitting on. And it puts pressure, for me, I'm short-legged, it puts pressure right behind my knees, right there. And it is extremely uncomfortable. It's almost like sitting on a toilet, which is not somewhere you want to sit for a long period of time. As far as, I guess, ergonomics of this truck, it's comfortable reaching as far as where your controls are at. Your bed dump controls are over here on the left, along with the tarp, but your PTO and tailgate opener over here on the right. I would prefer everything be on one side at my fingertips. That's just a preference. If you work at night a lot, it does have good headlights. They're plenty bright and they're spread out. Therefore, like I say, if you work at night a lot for any reason, or you're hauling a lot in the evening times, then you're not going to have any trouble seeing out of this truck. One really good thing about this truck, though, is that because the engine is so small and light, the front end is not very, very bad to sink in comparison to the rear end of it. Therefore, this truck is really decent off-road traction. You can take this truck off in grass, whereas my bigger truck, it's got a 10-liter engine, still single axle, but the old truck has an older, big engine. It's heavy. You get that thing off-road, more than likely, you're stuck. You're spun out. End of days, unless you've got a load in the back to give you that traction you need. This truck does have an air locker in the rear end, and it is a true positive locking rear end. It does not like to turn once you lock that sucker in, and it does help you get out of a slippery spot here and there. I was very surprised. A couple of weeks ago we got some snow here, and coming up and out of my yard, if you guys have watched many of my videos, the road turns up at an angle and it flattens out at the top, and it was covered in snow, and all I had was my trailer hooked to the truck, and I thought, I'm gonna try it, but I bet anything this thing will spin out about halfway up through there. And lo and behold, the tires just slipped a little bit once, maybe twice. They just slip a little, but it kept traction and it pulled right up and out of there. It amazed me. My old truck would not have made it. Absolutely would not have made it. So there you go. That's one really good thing about this truck, is it does keep traction fairly well, and I attribute that to also the low torque. Having a lower torque makes it harder for it to break loose. I guess that works to its advantage. As far as the diesel exhaust fluid, the DEF fluid, this truck does not go through very much of it at all. It does not burn much of that stuff. I think it has a 5-gallon tank, and between oil changes, I might fill it up once or twice, maybe. Therefore, I'm not out much money on the diesel exhaust fluid. I will give it that. That's one thing about it. And that system is here, and I think it's probably here to stay for a long time until they come up with a better treatment system. And I think they will get it figured out to where it's not as bad as it was in the beginning, but people are still having issues. I do know that Cummins trucks don't have near the issues that other engines are having. I guess one thing I can throw in is the mirrors that come stock on this truck are huge. They work really good. They look good on the truck, and you really don't have much of a blind spot. I had them factory put hood mirrors on this truck, and they look good for the truck. They look like they were made for it, and they function very well. You can see extremely well in them. Overall, if I was just forced to put an overall rating on this truck and my experience with it, likes, dislikes, how it works, just overall, I would probably give this truck a 4 out of 10, and that's if my arm was twisted. I'm not a professional rater of vehicles, but I've drove a lot of trucks, semis, 18-wheelers, all different kinds, all different makes, models, and I would say this truck is probably, out of all of them, my least favorite, next only to the 1975 F750 that I had. And if I can, I'll try to put a picture up on the screen of that joker for you. And the only reason I rate it so low is because it was old. Obviously, old. Man, and that thing had a gas engine in it that was a dog. I mean, it was a dog. Super slow. So, between all the trucks that I have driven a lot, this one is number 2. And I would say, like, as far as trucks that I have driven on a daily basis for extended period of time, commercial trucks, I think I've probably run around 10, something like that. So 2 out of 10 is not very good. The next question, would I recommend this truck to anybody? If you are in flat country, coastal regions, or like South Carolina, land where it's flat and it's not mountainous and you don't have a lot of hard pulls, this would be a good truck. I think it would serve somebody quite well at the price point that it is. And this truck, set up the way that I wanted it, was $95,000 or so. Would I recommend it for somebody in mountainous terrain where they have hard pulls and you need a lot of torque? Absolutely not. I would not recommend the Ford F750 at all. Would not recommend it. It simply does not have the torque, and it does not have an engine option that has the torque for mountainous terrain. That makes the last question to answer pretty obvious, but I have to throw it out there anyway. Would I buy this truck again? Absolutely not. I would lean more toward a single axle International or a single axle Mac. I would lean toward trucks that have been making commercial trucks for a long time. Ford used to make commercial trucks way back when, and then they sold out. It became Sterling, and you know, it's a personally owned Freightliner. Anyway, if you're going to be needing a commercial truck go with a commercial truck company. And Ford is just not, at this point, in my experience, very good at putting out commercial trucks. If you engineers at Ford are listening, or anybody with Ford is listening, and I think I've been pretty objective with this review, you need to offer different engines. You need to offer a bigger engine, an engine that puts out a lot more torque. We're not worried about horsepower when it comes to these size of trucks. What we need is torque. We need 800 or 900, I don't know if it's foot-pounds or pound-feet. Anyway, around 800 to 900. That's what I would like to have. Also, I need a manual transmission. This will be the last automatic transmission I have in one of my dump trucks. It does not work well for what I'm doing. I'm sure it works well for somebody who can't run a clutch anymore, somebody who is physically not in shape to be able to drive a manual transmission. Let's face it, the clutches in those trucks are hard to push for some people. But for what I do, and if you're an engineer, I hope the company sees this, because it's important to them to put out trucks that we can use. We need a big, hefty engine with a lot of torque and a lot of compression. We need either a very effective exhaust brake, or just straight up, I would love to have had an option for an engine brake. I want to say this truck has around, somewhere around 6 to 650 on the torque side of things, and it's just not got it. Some of you out there may have F650s, F750s. Chime in, put in the comments what you do, what you use them for. Do they work good for you? I am sure there's a bunch of people out there that would love to have this truck in comparison to what they already have. I am thankful to have this truck, and that I'm thankful that I was able to afford this truck. But I could have afforded something that would have worked better and suited my business better. Guys and gals, thank you for joining me on this review. I've had a really good time putting it out there. And again, subscribe, because I'm going to do another review at 30,000 miles, 40, 50, 60,000 miles, on and on, as long as I've got this truck, so you guys can see what kind of service it's giving me and my company. Be sure to drop it in the comments. Let me know if I didn't answer any questions, and I will be glad to include them on the next review. Thanks, guys. We love you, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.